Alright, so when we ended off the last time, we said we were going to be doing wiring and stuff underneath the car, but instead, we made wrench chucks. These are for when you're working in the shop, and if you got any annoying siblings that come in, or like some raccoons, or like the cows out in the field that come around, you can just whip these around a few times and take anybody out if you need to. So, but in all reality, we are about to start wiring everything up. Basically, how we're going to wire this, Peter, come over. Go sit and play with your switch panel. Ooh. So we made a homemade switch panel, kind of, just like everything else in this car. That's unnecessary. The door. Here, watch this. Oh, look at that.
You just ruined it.
Oh boy, we need a light over here. Yeah. Is that light bar? The LED one? Yes, it is. So basically, we're gonna have one switch. We have what was that called? I forgot what my uncle said it was.
So we got our switches here. This is a spring-loaded switch, so it automatically returns. That's going to be my starter switch. This is going to be my other switch. Ignition switch.
That's the turn on, like, so that's going to be wired in with the distributor so that the ignition works, and that's for the starter. And we'll worry about getting lights and stuff to work later, maybe.
Yeah. Right now we're just trying to get this thing to run.
So, and then, because we're not complete rednecks, we are going to try to use some fuses, and that fuse block that we ripped out from right there, we still got, there was actually 2 fuse blocks put together. Here's one of them right here, and where's the other one? Where's the nicer one, Pete? There's another smaller one that was on the side of this somewhere. We'll have to find it, just like everything else. And we're going to use that and run some fuses through there for the starter switch and the ignition. We'll try to figure that out somehow. We don't really know what we're doing right now, so we're all making it up and seeing how it works. For the first little bit of wiring that we got going on, this is the positive lead on the battery, and it's got this thing that goes out as power to the headlights, so that way the headlights will run even if the key switch is off on most cars. So that's what this is for, so that the headlights will still run. And then the bigger end of this, we ran down here, and this goes on to the top power on the starter relay here. So this is, I think, the starter relay from what I understand. This right here goes to that switch in the inside of the car, the one that goes up and then comes back down. And then, so this is power in, power out, and then this is the switch. And so when we flip that switch, the starter should turn over. And then the other thing we need to wire up is the distributor, which is right there. It's an HEI distributor. So on the other side, which we'll show later when we get around to that, we need to have a wire. There's 2 wires that can come out of that. One gives power to the distributor coil, and the other one is for the tachometer. I think we're just going to forget about the tach for right now and get the power into the coil, and that's going to be from that other switch, the one that just goes on and off and doesn't flip back. Just a regular toggle switch. And then the only other thing we need to run wires to get this thing started at a bare minimum is to wire up the alternator so that charges. And I think what we're planning on doing for that is we got on this particular distributor, there's 2 studs. That one right here, which is power out, and this one right here, which is a ground. So we need to run a really thick wire from here down to the same spot where this is on the starter, and that'll charge the battery. And then we just need to ground this one out to the block, and then we have a grounding strap right here, which will ground the chassis to the block so that the ground and the alternator will work. But unfortunately, the handy dumpy gas station down the road has everything else we could ever imagine, but they don't have thick enough wire. Most of the stuff I read online said we needed 4-gauge wire And the thickest stuff we have, we were going to use this, and this is, I think, only like a 10 or an 8. I think it's 10, but it could be maybe an 8, but anyways, that's still too small. Everything I said online said minimum of 6, and that's a high output distributor, which we'll probably need 4 gauge. So we're going to need to run into Fleet Farm or somewhere else that'll have 4 gauge wire later and get that. So for right now, we're just going to try to wire up the distributor, and we're just going to run wire from the distributor to the switch panel and ground that out, or ground the switch out. I'm not exactly sure how that has to go yet. I need to look at it a little bit more, but we got the starter mostly done, and we know what we need to do for the alternator. So the only thing we really need to figure out now is your switches. Yeah. All right.
You're clever.
We'll see if we can figure it out.
You should tell them about all the wires that we pulled out. Tell them that we're not using any of the old wiring.
Oh, yeah. So on this, we're just rewiring the entire thing, kind of fake rewiring it. This is basically just an entire series on how not to build a car, pretty much. These are all the old wires. We left them attached just in case. They're all down there. Not this. This is a shop vac, but it's hard to tell which is which.
No.
And we just unhooked everything because these wires are like 80% stock, and then somebody else went through here at some point and rewired stuff because we got all kinds of ratted up stuff. Like this is connected in the wiring somewhere. That's just somebody putting something together real redneck like, which that's pretty much exactly what we're doing. But here's another thing that's really all electrical taped together. So most of the stuff, I don't really know where it goes to because I don't really know how to wire anything after somebody else did half of a wiring job. So, oh, that is really, really, really bright. Turn them around. There you go. And so we're just rewiring everything and just getting the bare minimum on. There's our furnace. Shop heat right there. So we'll get some wires ran up to the switches, and we'll see how that goes. All right, so we decided to skip switches and whatnot. We just want to see if the starter will actually work with what we're planning on doing. So we actually got the battery hooked up for the first time in like a long time, and that's grounded to the block right there, the negative, and this we got strapped down to the starter. And I'm just going to take this here pliers and touch the post right there to the little where the switch is supposed to go. And I just want to see if this is going to work or not before we spend a whole bunch of time running wires everywhere. So if I die, this is how this is going to be.
Fire extinguishers on the other side of the car.
Yeah, Josh, go grab the fire extinguisher.
I'm not gonna need a fire extinguisher.
Hang on, wait. I need to get a better camera shot.
Has it been used?
Yeah, I sat on it.
Dude, it's on empty.
Yeah, no.
Let's go. Oh, no, it won't work at all. What happened?
Battery dead?
Can't be.
Maybe.
Something happened. It sparked. We're going to figure out what happened. And figure out what happened. That's all we know what's going on right now. Something happened and we don't know what, so.
What happened there?
That's a sad face. Alright, so we came up with a pretty quick fix to this issue. We had the terminals on the battery backwards. That might be why.
Wasn't my fault.
That might have been my fault.
Might have been.
If I die doing this.
Try it again.
Still doesn't happen. We finally figured out problem again. We got a different battery that we hijacked out of another car in the driveway, and now this should work.
It moves.
Finally.
Yes.
Half alive.
It's there. It's getting there.
So now that we got the engine turning over with the starter, what we got to do is we're finally going to run a wire from this little guy down here. We're going to run that to a switch so we can turn that on the
We're
switch.
gonna use these guys to connect it.
Oh, that's not in the light. So you got this little kit of stuff, and we're going to wind up using some of these right here. Oh, that's upside down. We're going to use one of these right here and splice it onto a bunch of, we got a bunch of 12 gauge wire laying around somewhere. So we're going to use 12 gauge wire and run that from that little switch on the relay to a switch in the, I don't know, cab of the car, whatever you want to call it, like the inside, on a switch so that we can start it from the switch. And then we got to do the same thing from the distributor to another switch so that we can turn our ignition on.
We're going full race mode, so we're not doing anything with a key. It's all switches. You just hit switches.
So
It'll be simple.
hopefully we can finally get something going now. We spent a lot of time trying to get that thing to turn over, and finally back on a roll again. So we're going to get started, and we'll be back when we got our wire made up to go in where we're going to go. So we got the wire going to the starter relay switch down there, and we got that going in through the same hole that we got our oil pressure sensor going through. Did we ever put the oil pressure sensor? I don't think we recorded any of that.
Never put any of that on camera.
No. Well,
Show them what it looks like.
so the oil pressure is this little nylon tubing right here, which goes into the back of the engine. Whoa.
Straight behind kind of by the distributor.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I can't see it. Maybe I can put my phone underneath in here. It's right there. That little thing right on the edge of the screen. I think. Yeah, right there. It goes in there. It's behind the distributor. It's easier to get at from the other side. Don't try to get at it from where I'm at. And so we just got that going right through there. And that comes in on the inside.
Comes in down there someplace.
Right in there. You can see both of them coming in.
Nose. And it comes up underneath the carpet.
This is the oil pressure tube, and this is the wire that we're running. And the wire comes in there, and this is our switch panel that we got.
That's going to be absolutely mint. Just
And the oil pressure sensor's right there, so we ran that up behind the dash, and there's our oil pressure. Oil pressure gauge, my bad.
You won't hardly be able to see any of the interior of these switches once. This will be all covered up. It'll look nice.
Nicer. And besides, since when was this thing supposed to look nice?
What?
So, I think we're just about done for the day, especially since my battery on here is just about dead. So, I mean, basically we're going to be wiring in a bunch of stuff into these switches, going through that hole in the, oh, that got dark. We're going to be going through the hole down there underneath the dash, because that's the fastest way to get through the firewall, and then we don't have to try to deal with getting stuff around hot headers and other moving parts that can chop our wires off and make all kinds of fancy stuff. Not fancy stuff. So yeah, we're just wiring everything into that switch panel right here. That's the toggle switch. This is the, I don't know,
Ignition. That's your start switch.
yeah, the start switch. So yeah, we're wiring this one in from here, and then we're going to wire in power onto the other side, and then this is going to go back out to the starter. And get it to turn over, and then this is going to be the switch to turn on and off the ignition on the distributor. So we're going to do all that off camera because the battery is just about dead, and it's just a lot of shoving wires through holes.
We'll show you guys the end result.
All right, so we finally got all the wires hooked up, at least for just the starter. We don't have any of the distributor done yet. But that's a job for sometime later. But the starter is working. Do the honors. We got the starter to turn over on the switch, which is pretty cool. Hopefully we're not lighting anything on fire anywhere or blowing anything up anywhere. But for right now, we are happy because it works. And I think we're going to call it quits tonight before we break anything else. Well, we might try to hook up the distributor, but that's going to be about the same thing as this.
Neutral.
And so we will be back in more videos with more really cobbled together stuff to come.
Well, this ain't the end of this project.
This definitely is not the end of this project, but we are one step closer, maybe. Yeah. So we're going to call it quits for there, and we will see you guys in the next video.